First, we will talk about the primary cell of the nervous system, the neuron. We will talk about the structure of neurons and also how they come together to form an entire network of nerve cells. The neuron is a very fascinating and vital portion of the nervous system because it allows the nervous system to communicate with the rest of the body. The structures of the neuron offers key features to help it transmit messages across relatively long distances. The neuron has a cell body which is also known as the soma, which houses the cell nucleus.
Next are the dendrites, which are tree-like branches that extend off the soma. These are used by the neurons to detect both chemical and electrical stimuli.
In the center of the neuron is the axon. The axon is the longest extension from the soma and can be up to a meter in length.
It serves as the primary communication pipeline from one end of the neuron to the another. The axon hillock is the junction that connects the axon to the cell body.
Covering the axon are myelin sheaths. These are the sections of fatty tissue that help to protect the axon and also help to speed up signal conduction along the axon. The gaps between myelin sheaths are called the nodes of Ranvier. These also aid in signal conduction and it also allows nutrients and waste to enter and leave the axon. Finally, at the end of the axon are extensions that branch off to form several axon terminals. Now that we've covered the structure of neurons, let's talk about how neurons come together to form a nerve cell network. Remember, neurons are supposed to send messages to each other, but how exactly does this happen? Message transmission happens at the synapse or synaptic cleft, which is the junction between one neuron's axon terminals and another neuron's dendrites. This is the special area where chemical and electrical neurotransmitters are released and picked up by the dendrites of the nerve cell. As neurons pass information to central nervous system, our body then interprets these messages as sights, sounds, aromas, and other sensations that allow us to observe the world around us. The great and mighty nervous system, or the brain as most of us call it. What makes this organ unique is that within it lies the ability for humans to know oneself. This feature distinguishes and sets the human species apart from the rest of creation. This ability is known as consciousness or intelligence. To begin, let's look at the primary function of the nervous system. The basic purpose is to coordinate all of the activities of the body. It enables the body to respond and adapt to changes that occur both inside and outside the body. Now, the nervous system is actually split into two parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. We'll explore the peripheral later, but first, let's look at the central nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of two major structures, the brain and the spinal cord. As most people know, the brain is found within a cranium or skull, and there are 6 main sections among other structures within it. These 6 sections are the cerebrum, cerebellum, diencephalon, the midbrain, pons, and the medulla oblongata.
The first section is the cerebellum. This is the largest section. It's divided into two major hemispheres, which are the right and left hemisphere. The cerebrum is divided into 4 lobes. These 4 lobes are the frontal, the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital. The frontal lobe is responsible for reasoning and thought. The parental lobe is responsible for integrating sensory information. The temporal lobe is responsible for processing auditory information from the ears. And the occipital lobe is responsible for processing visual information from the eyes. The second section of the brain is the cerebellum. This is located in the back of the head, below the cerebrum, and above the first cervical of the neck. It is responsible for muscle coordination, balance, posture, and muscle tone.
The diencephalon section is found between the cerebrum and the midbrain. It contains two structures, the thalamus and the hypothalamus. The thalamus behaves much like a relay station and directs sensory impulses to the cerebrum. The hypothalamus controls and regulates autonomous nervous system functions such as temperature, appetite, water balance, sleep, and blood vessel constriction and dilation. It also plays a role in the emotions such as anger, fear, pleasure, pain, and affection.
The midbrain section is located below the cerebrum at the top of the brainstem. It is responsible for eye and auditory reflexes.
The pons is located below the midbrain and in the brainstem. It is responsible for certain reflex actions such as chewing, tasting, and saliva production. The last section is the medulla oblongata. It's the lowest part of the brainstem and it connects with the spinal cord and is responsible for regulating heart and blood vessel function, digestion, respiration, swallowing, coughing, sneezing, and blood pressure. It's also known as the center for respiration. Now that we've covered the brain, let's take a look at the other half of the central nervous system, the spinal cord. The spinal cord is the link between the brain and the nerves from the rest of the body. The spinal cord is divided into 4 different regions: the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and the afferent and efferent spinal nerves, which merge to form the peripheral nerves. The afferent spinal nerves are responsible for carrying information from the body to the brain, and the efferent spinal nerves are responsible for carrying information from the brain to the body.
Now within this elaborate system of nerves, neurons, and dendrites, there is a system that regulates the function of the central nervous system, which lie outside its major component, such as the brain and the spinal cord. This system is known as peripheral nervous system. It is subdivided into 2 smaller systems, the somatic system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is responsible for carrying motor and sensory information both to and from the central nervous system. This system is made up of nerves that connect to the skin, sensory organs, and all skeletal muscle.
The somatic system is also responsible for nearly all voluntary muscle movements as well as for processing sensory information that arrives via external stimuli including hearing, touch, and sight. The structures that allow this communication to happen between the nerves throughout the body in the central nervous system are known as the afferent sensory neurons and the efferent motor neurons. Now, afferent simply means conducting inward and efferent means conducting outward. So just like in the spinal nerves, the afferent neurons take information from the nerves to the central nervous system. The efferent neurons take information from the central nervous system to the muscle fibers throughout the body. The autonomic nervous system is further divided into the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is vital to our survival. Have you ever heard of the fight or flight response to danger? The sympathetic nervous system revs up the body when confronted with imminent danger to either defend yourself or to escape the threat. The parasympathetic nervous system is the counterbalance to the sympathetic response to danger, whether real or imagined. Once the threat is gone, the parasympathetic brings all the systems of the body back to normal.